All right, welcome back to the Eric Jr. podcast. We are back. We have rearranged the furniture.
Yes.
We are ready to rock and roll after another brief break. Always got to keep it fresh. Want to shake the rust off in real time, but sometimes you need to take a couple days off. How you doing, sir? How you doing, Mr. West?
I am fantastic. Well rested after our brief hiatus. Last week was a chaotic time, and not that it's any less chaotic, but I'm at least in a better state of mind about it. I'm at least, I understand and have accepted some of the chaotic things about the Philadelphia sports scene.
I mean, if the professional athletes are going to get their rest days, then the podcasters are due the same
This
privilege.
is what no one's talking about, and that's why we're here to bring you the inside information.
To provide these takes, to provide this perspective.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, it's been a bit chaotic, pretty rough week, pretty rough go of it last week.
Yes.
Some real deflating losses on the Eagles' end and an overtime loss to the Timberwolves. I mean, just some real tough sledding there for our Philadelphia teams. But we're back after an Eagles win.
Yes.
Back after back-to-back wins for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yes.
So we are ready to get back on that horse and fall off in another couple weeks.
Fair weather fan. Some people are fair weather fans. We're fair weather podcasters.
That's right.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
and
put it any other way.
we have no shame about it.
That's right. So, as I mentioned, back-to-back wins for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to start tonight. Coming off of a real cathartic victory over the Atlanta Hawks. That Joel Embiid celebration at the end really was just overdue for him to feel that type of satisfaction.
Emotional payoff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And seeing him be so expressive was refreshing because, it seems like he's been so beaten down recently with just all of the dysfunction and the Ben Simmons stuff and just the team not being in a position to really compete this year.
Getting a disease and then it really affecting him. Yeah.
It's been a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't need us to tell you that. So, following that up with another tough win over the Hornets where he goes on an 8-0 run at the end of regulation to literally get them the victory.
Yes.
Just really, really nice to see. Overdue. And just your thoughts, Joel Embiid recovering from COVID, coming back onto this team, and just putting up numbers right away. He says he's still not feeling, obviously, where he needs to be. It's going to be a ramp-up process. But just your thoughts seeing the big fella back.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome watching him dominate, and it's one thing for him to put up the gaudy numbers, but last night watching the game, what really stuck out was his defensive intensity. It was at a level that we hadn't seen in a while. Just getting to every block, not giving an inch in that defense, really holding it together. And then, of course, you add 15 for 20 shooting or whatever it was. Just an elite performance for him, albeit against a undermanned Charlotte team. Didn't have any anybody to oppose him, really. No post presence to say, but watching him do that and it just getting him back into the swing of things after the COVID, it's important to see these steps being taken, and that's a performance you can really hang your hat on.
Absolutely. And just, again, at a micro level, the ebb and flow of that game, the Sixers go up by 10, then the game is tied. They pull away, they go up 8, the game is tied again, now they're down by 5. Joel Embiid refused to let his team lose that game. And seeing your star franchise top 10 player do that, it never is going to get old.
No.
We can never forget what he is capable of.
Never take it for granted.
How special he is, the way that he plays. I mean, when he hits that bucket to tie it up at the end of the game, where he brings the ball up, backs down, faces up, pull up, mid-range right in your face. I mean, no player does that. And we just have to, every time when he has these moments, we have to take just a minute, a day, to reflect, to remember, to appreciate before moving on and getting bogged down by the rest of it.
Yeah, 100% agree. We saw pretty much everybody outside of Embiid going through a little bit of a struggling process right now. The offense is not clicking in any way. You hoped that when Joe got back and Tobias and everybody got back, it would gel more seamlessly. It hasn't. There were some new moving parts, guys in different roles than they were last year. Some of that is to be expected, but you got to feel a little frustrated watching the offense these days. just slog through games. That's really causing a lot of frustration for fans.
For sure. And so for right now, the highlight is going to be Joel Embiid.
Right.
He's why you lead off the podcast. He's why you have a podcast in the first place.
Fair, yeah.
Some other, I thought it was Shake Milton's been starting to. It appears turn a corner a little bit.
Yeah. You hope, yeah.
We're looking for bright spots. The rest of the roster right now, I don't have much to say about it.
Yeah.
We'll give those guys shout outs. Furkan's been struggling. Drummond is going to do what he does. I mean, we'll give those guys the recognition when they deserve it.
Right.
But for right now, the story is the big fella being back and his process of getting back to that elite level of once you have a player playing at his level, you have a chance at anything.
Yeah, it's an important note because without him, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter as much, right? Like, it matters, but it doesn't, kind of. Because Embiid being the guy and getting him healthy at 100% in the playoffs has always been, like, first and foremost. That's step number one, right? And then you see what you can do around it. And it seems like he's getting back to his old self, and that's just a welcome sight for Sixers fans.
Absolutely. Now that we've given Joel his shout-outs as necessary, it's time for us to pivot.
Yes.
Okay? Pivot as they do in the game of basketball, and it is time for us to talk about Mr. Ben Simmons.
Yes.
Somebody who has been in the news lately. We haven't been getting the traditional Ben Simmons updates, I would say.
Right, yeah. This is an untraditional Ben Simmons update.
As we approach that December 15th, timeline, things have begun to shift from Ben Simmons' core of, whatever the excuse is.
Right.
Now it's the other NBA teams.
Right.
Those are the ones starting to put out the feelers and the headlines and the rumors, the leaks to the Wojs and the Shams. So why don't you talk me through a little bit?
Yeah.
The past couple of days, it's certainly been heating up. Talk me through some of these NBA franchises and them starting to get a little bit of the heat around the corner.
Yeah, the itch, as it were. Absolutely. The big news this week, obviously, is out in Portland. First, you have the firing of their longtime head of basketball operations, Osley, I think his name is.
Neil. We'll call him Neil.
Neil. And obviously all the implications that brings. And then today you have the Shams Sam Amick athletic report, and then another report from Bleacher Report today, just like on top of each other of the dysfunction around what is happening in Portland. Damian Lillard wants out, but he doesn't want out. He doesn't want to say he wants out. He has this list of demands. One of them was for them to trade CJ for Ben Simmons. And this is like the first time I feel like we've gotten legitimate reporting about a team actually wanting Ben Simmons. Legitimately, like, we want him. Like, there's obviously we've heard rumors before, and obviously we know teams are like kind of interested. Every team's kind of interested, but this is the first concrete reporting that we've had of like, oh, Damian Lillard wants Ben Simmons on his team. The new GM in Portland is probably going to feel some pressure to make that happen, wouldn't you say?
Yes, you're totally right. This is a legitimate checkpoint in our Ben Simmons journey.
Yeah. And that's a good point. That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up because I've consulted with my specialists and my advisors, and I can now say that we are ready to move from DEFCON 4 to DEFCON 3 in the Ben Simmons trade watch. This is a big development. Now, obviously, for people familiar with the DEFCON system, 5 is just normal, everyday, and then 4, a little bit upgraded from that. That's a little bit more heightened activity. It's you're aware of things. That's what we've been at since the Ben Simmons trade demand. We've been at 4. Mm-hmm. We're moving up. We're moving up to 3. And we're ready. I'm so ready for that Woj tweet to bump us right up to 1, man. I am so freaking ready.
Really appreciate you walking us all through the DEFCON
Yeah, well,
system.
A lot of people are confused. They think that 5 is the highest. Not the case.
So listen, that's why you got to come here. That's why you got to come talk to the non-experts to get what the people really want to know. And if we remove our Philadelphia hats for just a minute here, you put yourself in the perspective of a Portland fan and you say, okay, listen, this guy has gone in every different direction, Damian Lillard, of saying that all they want to do is promote this drama, but also saying I'm okay with New York, but not really Philly, but maybe Philly, but I also want to play with Ben Simmons. I mean, he's had it every which possible way, every spin that you could have on this story, they have covered it. Okay? And the way that Portland is looking right now, they clearly are in the same position that they've been the past several years, which is good regular season, gonna sneak into the playoffs, 0.000 chance of making any legitimate noise come playoff time. Okay? So we have reached an impasse, and the organization has to decide, do you give up more assets to make Damian Lillard happy and just keep him there and say, you're staying with us probably for your career? Or is it finally time for the seismic move that they should have done several years ago when they got swept by the Pelicans in the playoffs? Okay, so they are at more of a inflection point than I think that they've ever been.
This is clear. That's a good inflection point. I totally agree. They're at a crossroads. Their new GM, whoever it may be, has some big decisions on their hands, because not only are they, all the things you said, looking toward a postseason of very meaningless basketball. Right now, they're 3 games under 500. They've lost 5 of 6. Damian Lillard has been struggling with some injury problems. He's got an abdominal thing.
Shooting 30% from 3.
He's shooting 30% from 3. Like, things are not going well in Portland right now, and there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. So this is absolutely an inflection point for Portland. Where they go from here, and importantly, how quickly are these steps being taken? How quickly are they going to add a GM, or at least decide who's going to run their franchise? Because you can't let an interim make that decision. You can't let an interim decide the fate of the entire franchise for the next 5 years, which is what's going to happen this season, probably.
Exactly. And granted, my contacts in Oregon are pretty limited, but I would ask you, sir, if you are a Portland fan, what do you want the team to do? Don't you want them to get a Lions Hall back for Damian Lillard? I'm talking the James Harden package of picks plus 2 legitimate players. I'm talking 3 first and Ben Simmons and Tyrese Maxey. Don't you want that? Isn't that better for you? Like, hasn't this run its course?
Well,
I gotta think.
The one thing I think that's stopping Blazers fans from taking that last step is we've never seen Dame without CJ. It's been the duo, and the duo from the outside, I mean, it's more so than what people always said about the Sixers duo, is that it won't fit. Theirs actually will never fit. It'll never be a contending championship team because of those 2 small guards, the amount of defense they play. It would just never happen. If I was a Blazers fan, I would explore Ben Simmons options with CJ and picks and whatever else it took, maybe 3-team trades, something. That's what I would do. And that's what I think they will do, because there's no rush in getting rid of Dame. Like, he's there. He's locked up right now. I think you can afford to kind of play it out a little bit. I agree that at one point, probably in the near future, it's going to reach where you have to make a decision, either extend him or trade him. We saw reporting that I think it was by Woj, that GM candidates are being asked about extending Damian Lillard and what they would do in that situation, and that Damian Lillard feels it's important to him to. I mean, he's already locked in for 4 years. He's asking for basically to put on another 2 at the end. Ensure that he's a extremely high paid player, well into his late 30s. Which is something that I think is going to cause a lot of people, discomfort because of the amount of success they've had. Portland is a small market team. That's a legitimate friction point between him and the franchise that we haven't seen since. We obviously the talk of him wanting better teammates and a better coaching and better whatever, all that. We know about all that, but that's something that I think could really drive the wedge between Portland and Dame is him wanting this extension and the next potential GM not wanting to give it to him.
Right, and I don't want to belabor this too much. What you mentioned about them being a small market is important simply because for them to remain regularly, seasonally competitive is important to not, lose face in terms of having relevance. But what the word that you mentioned, fit, obviously their size has inherent limitations.
Sure.
But the fit in terms of a complementary backcourt of just like two really good guards, I don't know if that's the problem necessarily. It is the inherent limitations when things matter the most.
Sure.
So is a fan base willing to sacrifice knowing that at the end of the road, the story's always going to end the same way, but I really like the main characters, so I'm okay as a fan.
Right.
So that's really the position.
And I think that's some people's, and that's a totally valid.
Fandom is a difficult thing to define.
Yeah.
We certainly know that.
You're absolutely allowed to have whatever, enjoy your thing however you want to enjoy it. We're not going to tell you how to be a fan. I think that's a totally valid perspective, and one that I think a lot of Portland people would share, which is why I think you go down the road of exploring non-nuclear options in terms of Damian Lillard, just because he is just so beloved there. He clearly feels he's drawn to that place. He feels a very strong connection. He doesn't want to leave, but he also wants to compete for a championship
and be recognized as one of the elite, premier talents and available entertainment, figures in this entire sport. So again, if you're going in that direction, then you revisit a CJ McCollum and 3 firsts and 3 swaps. And if you're that position for the Blazers, and you're saying, why the hell aren't we doing 2 firsts and 2 swaps and CJ and Nasir Little, whatever it takes to make this guy happy? Because in 2021, nobody is staying with the same franchise for the entirety of their career.
Right.
Tom Brady plays for the freaking Bucks, man. Nobody is going to stay with their whole same one organization that drafted them for their entire career. Dame is open to the possibility, and if he's open to the possibility, then it is the responsibility of the people in charge to say, we'll do whatever it takes. Sure, Ben Simmons has no trade value. We'll give you the 3 firsts and CJ. Whatever it takes to keep this guy happy, to keep him here, let's re-sign him, whatever it is. But it's time for a decision, Portland.
Right, exactly.
It's time for you to put your foot down.
They've been sitting on the fence for 3 seasons, basically, about the CJ Dame long term, their franchise, what they want it to be. You can't do that anymore. Dame has, the conversation around him has kind of brought it to his front door.
He's dipped his toe in the water, and now we're starting to splash.
And you can't put the cat. Just to use one more, I think we need one more metaphor.
The pool, the cat, it's all the same.
You can't put it back in the box, right?
That's right.
You can't do it.
You can't put the cat back in the pool. That's exactly what we're saying here, and that it makes a lot of sense if you really think about it. Now, okay, I think that was a pretty exhaustive and necessary conversation.
Very necessary
about Portland. There are rumors about another team, the Indiana Pacers.
Sure.
We have Tobias Harris talk to get into.
Right.
Listen, we can't spend all day on the Sixers. Give me the things that you got to get off your chest here on December the 7th, 2021.
I think Ben Simmons is going to be traded before Christmas.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think he's going to get traded before Christmas. I think it's going to be I don't know how the deal is going to work out. He's going to end up in Portland. I think they're going to make that happen. I think it's a very logical and easy thing to do. Now, the Sixers' perspective of, they want a star. They want Dame, obviously. They want Dame.
Yes.
That's been made clear. But they can't get Dame right now. So what do? Okay, you move Ben Simmons for the most amount that you can move him. We're talking picks. We're talking young players. We're talking, guys who can help the team right now. It's going to be a multi-team trade, undoubtedly. We saw the James Harden deal last year involve up to 4 teams. It could be that same. It could be go up to 5. Who knows? But I just think one way or another, Portland is the team that has been linked with him most aggressively. They're the obvious team that should want him the most. And, where there's demand, that's where the supply goes, right? I think that's going to end up happening. Now, what the Sixers would want back in that, I think it's going to be a type of wing player, maybe Karis LeVert, maybe CJ gets rerouted to Dallas.
Yeah.
And you get Tim Hardaway Jr. and you can get more picks. You're talking 3-4 first-round picks plus swaps. That's everything. It's not everything Daily Morey could dream of, but it's the next best thing, because I don't think that there's a superstar trade available in February. So moving Ben for picks now keeps your optionality open. And honestly, like, if and when a Dame, ask out or trade demand happens, I think Portland's probably going to be more receptive to the Maxey and a shit ton of picks deal, rather than, a deal centered around a super flawed player like Ben Simmons.
A super flawed 3-time All-Star.
Sure, fair, whatever.
You're totally right, and that's eventually that's where you got, which is when that superstar level player becomes available, and in this situation it's going to be Dame.
Right.
There's no one really of his caliber that it seems like
maybe Beal, but they've been playing so well that, and he's been such, he's had every opportunity to ask out. So Damian is in a league of his own right now.
That creative combination of assets is exactly where I think this thing is on a crash course towards.
Yeah.
So whether it is shipping off Ben Simmons somewhere completely where we weren't thinking of,
it could be. That could be
2 or 3 lightly protected first, and then also flipping something else, and now you're sitting there with, like you said, 4 first and maxing whatever else it is.
Yeah.
Because that's more palatable to an organization saying we're giving up our star player, and for some freaking reason we like the non-tangible asset of picks more than we do of a player at NBA caliber that's going to provide this specific skill. Yeah. That's just what organizations want. They want picks. They
want freedom, and Ben Simmons is very restrictive.
Yes.
He controls a lot about your organization when you have him. I mean, how many times did we have the discussion of like, oh, I love that player, but he can't play with Ben.
Yeah.
Like, it controls who you sign, who you trade for, who you draft.
But if you're getting rid of Dame, even to have a guy that's that limited, in a way it doesn't sting as bad, because you've just given up this player that, you're never going to be able to achieve the same level of notoriety or success probably without. So, like, you're automatically limiting yourselves.
I agree with you, but like it or not, Sam Hinkie developed a style of rebuild that was total, and it involved stripping it down to the bare part, and it was very successful. I know we haven't won a championship, but it got 2 great players.
And relevance.
It got relevance, exactly. That's, I think, very appealing to GMs right now.
Yep.
Like, and it also, optionality is important to GMs. They want to be able to make moves and stuff.
Well,
so I think that's why we're seeing reluctance from teams that are going to be in the teardown situation for Ben Simmons. Why they wouldn't obviously want a guy like Ben Simmons. We talked about Portland. Indiana, of course, is looking to tear it down as well. Karis LeVert is on the market, as is Sabonis. That player movement is going to be very interesting, combined with obviously the Ben Simmons trade that we think is going to happen.
Yeah, I just think my only qualm is that these small market teams, when you strip it down to the to the bolts, like, they can't really afford to do that, because it seems like the spotlight and the threat of them moving franchises, if it goes on for more than a year, all of a sudden there's so much talk.
Well, they don't do it.
City.
They
are starting to have those murmurs and discussions and talks of, like, you can't really do this that much longer. Like, you can't have a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and continue to waste several more years of his prime.
Yeah.
So you can't have a good actual NBA player, not, superstar, but maybe an all-star, and then surround him with nothing, and then expect him to be okay even though you're paying him the most you can pay him.
Yeah.
That's where these small market teams like an Indiana, like a Portland, it's just not the same math.
No, I agree. And I want to clarify, when I talk about what Sam Hinkie's influence was, I don't expect any other teams to kind of do it to the extreme that Sam Hinkie did for years. But I think a lot of GMs would like the opportunity to break it all down, and then in one off season, and then they rebuild it, and then they start. That's what I was referring to when I talk about the strip down.
An accelerated strip down.
Yeah, an accelerated, not the 3+ years of process.
But that many shots at the apple, that's how you end up with. So you can afford to miss one or two.
You're not
right?
wrong. You're not wrong.
It's a paradox.
We're getting into relitigating the process.
There we go.
We're not allowed.
That's where it always ends up. So,
and no Sixers podcast has been allowed to do that since 2018.
That's right. It's in the bylaws. Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a step back. We're going to talk about one more Sixers-related topic before we move off of this segment.
Yeah.
And that topic is how George Niang is essential to beating Boston in a series. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that's just I had to get that in there. George Niang, the fieriness, the anger that he plays with, that's the guy you need in a tough playoff series. Okay, I'm sorry. The guy we have to talk about is Tobias Harris, a guy that the disdain seems to be growing by the day, and I am leading the charge.
Yes.
I can't stand this guy anymore. Look, he's a great guy. He knows a lot about crypto. He reads a lot of books. I'm sorry, man. Watching you play on this team, watching what a George Niang can do with his floor stretching and just his complementary, role next to Joel Embiid, it leaves me so upset watching Tobias Harris. Even if he was only getting paid half of what he's getting paid, I would say it doesn't really make sense for him to play that much, man. He's just not doing much for me. So I need you to talk me off the ledge a little bit. I need you to just calm me down. Calm the Philadelphia metropolitan area down from this Tobias Harris anger.
Well, we've seen this before. Like, this isn't new. The Tobias discussion is not new. It's been going on since we traded for him. Every few months, he has a dip in form. The shots aren't falling.
Dip in form.
He's got a dip in form. Like, come on. He's played like 15 games this year, and he had COVID in the middle of it. I know he's come back from COVID.
I have never watched a player drop 20 and 10 and been more frustrated watching. I swear to you, I have never had somebody with those counting stats and been like, this is terrible.
Yes. No, I get it. I get that, and I am frustrated with him too. I wish we didn't sign him to that crazy contract. But he's here, and you know what else? He's important to the team. He's very important. And I'm not just talking about the locker room stuff. I'm not. But I do think that deserves merit when we're talking about these young guys that we're trying to develop, Maxey and Joe and Thibault. These guys that we hope to blossom into stars. He's very important to them. They all talk about it. They all mention him. But I'm also talking about on the court. He is still an effective player. He's still getting you 20 and 10. That's not remember the Evan Turner and Andre Iguodala and Thad Young Sixers? Nobody ever scored 20 points. That was the hallmark of those teams. Nobody ever scored 20 points. Tobias Harris can score 20 points in a game. That shouldn't be, dismissed. These people saying we should trade Kevin Love for Tobias. You can't do that. You can't trade Tobias for no value because it, completely tanks your season. You cannot expect to compete without getting Tobias.
That's a bridge
without Tobias or something you're getting back. And his value is he has more value to you than his trade assets would to you.
Certainly. But you just in terms of fit, like you said, dropping the 20 points is still important, but that can still be manufactured, I think, by other pieces. It's gotten to the point where watching him play, you watch that Hornets game, and I know he's coming back from COVID. So is Joel, but he is collapsing the zone in the middle, and instead of going right up with it or instead of kicking it out to a three-point shooter, he's still force-feeding it to Joel. The other guys can do that. The young, inexperienced guys, sure, they can feel the pressure to have to feed the big man, but Tobias Harris should not feel that. He should have the inherent belief in himself, the confidence to go up with it. We saw it one time against the Lakers where he hit the game winner with 3 seconds left. Other than that,
what a game.
What an amazing shot. That bought him so much time for so many fans to just be completely blocked for the rest of you look at the playoff series, his numbers are never there. I'm not saying necessarily for Kevin Love. I think maybe we talk about Ben Simmons nonstop. I think maybe there's a middling franchise out there where they talk themselves into, well, look at this guy's counting stats. Plays the 4, can stretch the floor, hypothetically, and maybe could be of some value to us. Let's give them the money to make it work. We'll not give up anything of real value. Maybe a Terrence Ross and Gary Harris. Could I interest you in the Orlando Magic? I do think that there is a trade out there, albeit hard to identify, where you get rid of Tobias Harris and you get back a helpful piece. And what you're saying about him, the tutelage to the young guys, totally believe that. But I think increasingly his role on this team, especially now that you have at least some legitimate backup forward play, maybe, I do think the conversation and the murmurs are growing louder every day.
Yeah, I with the Tobias stuff, it's tough, like trading him. I understand the increase in flexibility, I really do, but I think it's a little overplayed in the fact that I don't think Tobias has really stopped you from getting anybody the last couple years. Like, the NBA is such that, like, being over the cap doesn't matter. If a player wants to come to your organization, 90 times out of 100,
he'll find a way to get there.
He'll find a way to get there. Exactly. Like, we're not missing. Like, maybe we miss out on the second tier guys like Caruso or something. Like, sure, he would be helpful, but that's not altering your franchise, right? Like, so when you're talking about trading Tobias, we've already lost so much value on the team that losing value on him just to get out from under it, just to offload him, just on the. You won't remember the last time we cleared salary space and had all that money. Like, we signed Al Horford and Tobias Harris. Can you reasonably expect to do much better?
A different leadership in place, but no, I do agree with you in that. And to kind of finish off and play devil's advocate against myself, Tobias Harris is the opposite of a toxic personality.
He's so nice, man. Everybody loves that guy.
So, like, that is what always keeps me coming back.
If I worked with Tobias Harris, I too wouldn't want him.
I've never had a coworker probably in my life that resembles his kindness and his willingness to share important information, insight, wisdom, financial advice. I mean, this guy, come on, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Come on, it's fine, man. It's fine. I mean, he can be frustrating as hell. It's fine.
Yeah, so that is definitely something to watch for the rest of the year.
Is there any chance he gets moved before the trade deadline this year? Give me a percentage.
I think it's less than 5.
Less than 5%.
I think it's like...
I'd put it at 12. I think there's a 12% chance.
I think it's
never
less
put anything
than
past Daryl Morey.
He is a wild man.
If they could not get a reasonable trade, if it's literally CJ and no picks for Simmons, and there's no way you're going to be able to trade Simmons, sure, I could see him saying we're going to trade Tobias. We got to do something to shake it up. I don't know. I guess that would upset Joel. It's all about what Joel wants.
Exactly. I think
Joel obviously loves him.
I think that would really be tough for Joel. Anything that, if you're trading Tobias Harris and you're not getting back like an equivalent on-court piece, somebody else who can maybe not fill that exact role, but fill a role. Like, if you're not doing that, then I think that's going to be tough to explain to
further organizational malpractice, which we've become much too accustomed to.
Accepting. Yeah. Okay. So I think we've had enough Sixers
You're
talk.
Tapping out on the Sixers talk.
I'm tapping out
after a half hour. Fine.
Well, it's been that was quite extensive. We, in a short period of time, we really ran through a lot of different scenarios. We were talking for the whole time. So why don't we head to some other less talked about sports teams on this podcast?
Sure. So there is another Philadelphia sports team that is on a bye week this week. That would be your Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Sitting at 6-7, coming off of a very important, not a must-win, but a can't-lose game against the New York Jets. A team that we are undefeated against, which was
strangely
just a low-key, just threw that out there on the broadcast. It's never lost to him. Ben Simmons against the Knicks, never lost to him. Just like an absurd statistic, but Gardner Minshew goes out there, plays a really nice game, has the highest QBR since Nick Foles and the Vikings did. Whatever, okay? Yeah. Gardner Minshew played really well. I think the consensus is needed to have that win.
Yeah.
Really a lot of subterfuge going in, though. I mean, everybody thought Jalen Hurts was going to play. I thought everybody did.
It sounds like Jalen Hurts thought Jalen Hurts
thought he was going to play that game. Yeah. So the most important thing, they sneak out of there with a victory.
Right.
They are at 6-7. They have 4 divisional games coming up.
Yep.
Everything is still in front of them. They've got veterans on this roster that at the beginning of the year were probably questioning what they are doing, sacrificing their body for this team and its future. But here they are in a position to possibly sneak into the playoffs. you got to be pretty satisfied as a fan with how they've been able to steady the tide.
Yeah.
And it's going to be exciting going into the final stretch here. And what are your thoughts, I guess, on the game, just on where they stand at this position going into the bye, the latest bye week that I can ever remember, just on a sidebar there.
There are 17 games.
It's egregious.
So I get, it's like, I didn't even know we didn't have it yet. I thought we'd had it already. I thought we'd already had it.
There's no way to explain it. But how are you feeling about the team?
Well, it's difficult because, you come off the back of the Giants loss, and obviously that was just such a demoralizing loss for the entire fan base. It felt like, momentum was, there was momentum, like, things were changing a little bit for the better. Hurts was showing progress, Sirianni, of course, like, and then to have that deflating loss. But you got to just step back, and, like, that's what, teams do. Young teams, young coaching staff, mediocre teams, which is, I think, fair to say the Eagles are. You lose a little bit of focus, you lose a little intensity, and the Giants caught them. I liked their response against the Jets. I thought they came out, they played very hard. They played fairly well, I think.
Especially after getting punched in the mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
At the beginning of the game, it seemed like, oh my gosh, this could be catastrophic, the way that game started.
Yeah, no, and the way they rebounded. Obviously, Minshew deserves a lot of credit. He played well, but I think the circumstances around him were very favorable. The line was really effective. The run game, was churning.
75 yards. That offensive line deserves every accolade, every bit of
getting healthy and like really rounding into form right now,
and
which is like what the formula is, right? Like that's anytime the Eagles have been good in the past decade, the formula starts with the offensive line.
The Howie special.
That's the Howie special. So that is it's very encouraging. Despite the Giants' loss, that's a legitimate sign that this team is legit. But about the Jets game, it's still the Jets. Like you go in there, you take care of business. It's not like they blew them out. It's not like they demolished them. I thought they played
3 touchdowns.
They gave up 3 touchdowns. Yes, of course. I think that this team is where we thought it was for the last month, basically, where they have some favorable matchups coming up. If they can take care of business in those games, they have an outside shot of getting a 7th seed, and that's pretty freaking wild. But I can't say it won't happen at this point.
They enter the season. They're over under 6.5. Here we go into the bye. They've got 6 wins. And they're very much in it, dude. And,
one game back of the wild card, I think.
One game back of the wild card, and it seems like both sides of the ball, they've shifted their identity. Nobody figured that they would be this dominant running team, but here they are, shifted their focus to meet the strengths of their players. The adjustments have been important. That's what we've been looking at for the defensive side of the ball and also the offensive side of the ball. From where they started, Jalen Hurts throwing as much as he was at the beginning of the year to now.
It's wild, absolutely wild when you think about it.
But the key is that the coaches did adjust, that they did say, I will stick to this scheme, and I believe, like a Chip Kelly-esque where it's like it's all scheme. If you can execute it, it will work, guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been really important and encouraging. Quick thing about that Giants game, I've been really workshopping this. Miracle at the Meadowlands number 3. Not with me. The Jalen Reagor story.
Wow.
That was just and this game too lets the ball bounce at the 1, has a punt that almost gets past. This guy, listen, I don't want to just drag him through the dirt, but
he's getting a lot of flack.
I will trade any team a 6th-round pick to get Jalen Reagor off my team. That's where I'm at. Give him a fresh start, allow him to flourish elsewhere. I will give you a pick to get him, the former first rounder, off my team. Look at all the wide receivers doing well that were taken after. T. Higgins, freaking Brandon Ayuk, Laviska Shenault, all these guys,
legitimate.
Everybody is better than, he is the one guy out of that whole first 3 rounds that's bad, and he's our guy. I'm sorry. I just had to get it out there. They're 6 and 7. We should be pretty happy. But
yes. Jalen Reagor's tough. It's been a tough few weeks for the guy. I think that the fan base, it's taken the famous turn of defending promising young player, defending. Okay, get him out of here. I can't take this guy anymore. Like
he's ruining my marriage.
It's happened with it's happened with every wide receiver since freaking I don't even know. But it's finally happened. I think everybody is upset with him, and we just need to move on. I think just move on.
All parties.
Let's just cut. Honestly, let's just cut him. I'm totally fine.
The thing is, like, you say that, and people are like, "That is just the most ridiculous." It's like, no, man.
He's hurting the team.
Let him go.
At least
elsewhere.
take him off punt returns.
Yes,
take him off punt returns. He has not been good this year, and now he's fucking up at it.
Right.
You can't fuck up at punt returns.
If there's one thing that we specialize in, it's recognizing when psychologically something is wrong with our athletes. And I'm getting that. My spidey sense is tingling.
Wow.
Okay, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. He's probably going to go somewhere else, either at this offseason or sometime soon. He's probably going to do well, and that's fine.
Maybe.
Nelson Aguilar got the bag to go to New England. Look at how they're playing. Whatever. But bottom line, this team, I'm pretty invested, and I didn't ever want to admit that.
Yeah.
And here we are going into the last 4 games, and I am completely all in. A playoff berth would be massive for these coaches, for this quarterback, for this fan base.
For the fan base, for the organization. I've always thought that the NFL was different than the NBA in terms of tanking, because in the NFL, it's like the positive of like stacking playoff appearances and stacking good seasons like time after time, it changes your perception. It changes the players' feelings about you.
The culture,
exactly. It's very important. And when you have 53 guys having to pull together on something, that stuff's important because you can't reach every single individual.
Yep.
The same way you can on a smaller basketball team or something. So that stuff's important, and to see for this to happen in a down year, when no one expected anything,
a quote unquote transition
year, absolutely, and it still is in a way. Like no one's, we're
gonna end the season with 6 wins.
We're gonna they're not gonna go 4-0 out of the bye. Like that's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But there'll be bumps along the road. But I think it's important. I think it's a positive step in the direction, even if we don't get a slightly higher draft pick or whatever. And it's disappointing, to say the least, that the Dolphins have reeled off 6 straight.
Really, just taking it to us. After we were all just like, oh my gosh.
I mean, we got a little too big for our britches. I'll admit it. I'll be the first to admit it. But they really didn't have to do us like that.
They didn't have to do us like that. And also, maybe it's better because we don't do well with the top of the draft, as is borne out in our previous drafts. We're better in the middle, trading back, getting a 2022, 2023 pick, whatever it is. But just like we did with Joel at the top of the show, that moment of appreciation, reflection, this Eagles team having something to play for the last quarter of the season.
Who would have thought?
We got
look at us.
We got look at us. We gotta just totally acknowledge that. Yes. And I'm grinning ear to ear because after that Raiders loss, the way that we were talking about this team and these coaches, I mean, it's a real turnaround, complete 720, not a 360.
Wow, we went all
the way around twice, and here we are, man. And again, I'm giddy. We got a bye week coming up, so we're going to cool off a little bit. But hey, some very winnable games coming up. This Washington nameless team makes me a little nervous because they're just, they're frisky. This Heineke guy, I don't really love him. He's probably going to put up some numbers against us. But hey, a lot to be grateful for when it comes to this Eagles team. Football is a great sport to consume, and when your team is bad, it's really sucky.
It sucks.
It's
because it dominates the weekend.
When you're the Texans, when you're just the Jaguars, man, that stinks. So when you're the Falcons, God, they're just perennially disappointing. So anyway, feeling pretty good about the Birds.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good on waiting on talking about them at least for another couple days until next week when we go into when it starts to get real.
Yeah.
There is another team that we need to talk about. Now, are you ready to have this conversation?
I mean, it's tough for me. Are
you ready to have this conversation? Because the group chat didn't even mention the firing of a Philadelphia sports head coach.
Right.
We are reeling as a Philadelphia Flyers fan base. It is the Flyers' funeral.
Yes.
In years past, they've gone on 10-game win streaks only to fall short and do nothing and be a personification of mediocrity. They're losers of 9 straight.
That's so many games in a row.
They have fired their head coach. They have no identity. They are floundering after starting the season pretty solidly. A dog took a shit on their logo. I need you to just literally tell me what they should do. Is it time to trade Claude Giroux? Is it time to completely tank? Is it time to make a massive trade to get a superstar and give up all your young players? Tell me what to do as a guy that's been more invested in these Flyers than anybody in my friend group.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the thing is, in the immediate, like, you have to stop the fire. There's a fire going on. You've lost 9 straight games. You have to put out the fire.
Where is the extinguisher?
You have to win a game. You have to win a game. You have to find a way to win a game. I don't know whether it's a new coach, I don't know. You have to win a game, though. 9 straight? Are you kidding me? In hockey, anybody can win on a fluke. Yep. Like, it's so easy. Oh, my God. That's, like, honestly...
Let's do that's step one.
It's tough for me to, like, talk about, like, long-term stuff. 'Cause I'm like, you need to win a game, man. You need to show me that you can win a game. Because like in hockey it's tough because there's not a lot of incentive to do the full teardown. The guys at the top of the draft,
it's like Eichel or something, right?
There's talent pretty much throughout the first round of the draft, and most of it isn't going to be available for a couple of years. Most of them need to grow. Now, obviously, there's the special ones, McDavid, Eichel. Who are immediate like franchise changers,
but still years away now.
Some of them come in right away. Some of them take a while. But like, there's not a ton of incentive. But I think you do have a lot of veterans on this team, and you have a lot of high salary owners. I would start calling and just seeing what you can get, and then you organize the plan.
For who? We got to start talking real moves. Is it time for them to sell off anything that has value, or is it time for them to make a major splash because they haven't in the past 8 years?
I would say you definitely want to put a hold on any like legit, like going after anybody over the age of 31.
Right.
Like you have to look long-term view at this right now, and whether or not the GM Chuck Fletcher gets fired is I think still up in the air. I don't think that's a done deal yet. I think they like him. They liked his moves in the offseason. Clearly, like something about the recipe just didn't work, right? Like you missed a step. You added sugar instead of salt or something. Like I don't know what quite happened.
It's the worst tasting food I've ever had.
The team shouldn't be this bad. The team's more talented than this. They shouldn't be losers of 9 straight. Like, I think most people would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So right now you have to stop the fire, and then you have to take a look, and you have to start seeing what you can get for some of these guys. Is there a market for JVR? Maybe not. What if you eat a little bit of cash? What if you eat a little bit of salary? Like, you have to have those discussions right now. And then, if the team doesn't rebound, if they don't get the dead cat bounce, like, then... Yeah, you look at, you talk to Claude and say, what do you want to do?
Right.
You talk to these guys.
You owe him that.
Yeah, you absolutely. He's the guy on the team right now who's really you only know. I would say Carhartt's probably untouchable.
Let's hope.
Joel Farbery, another young, promising player, probably untouchable. Konechny, he's got to be available.
Yep.
These guys who are mainstays, but they have not been part of winning hockey. So how much attachment can you really have to them? Claude's the only guy that's been here pretty much since they were, one of the marquee franchises in the NHL, going to the playoffs, having these great battles with the Penguins in the playoffs. Like, it's been a long time since then. So you really got to look at it and, objectively take a step back and see what there is to do.
It just seemed like for the longest time that they were the organization that was not going to flounder in this capacity.
They were the stable one.
They were, again, hover around 500, hypothetically be able to sneak into the playoffs at the end of the year. Yeah, they're in a tough division, but they're respectable. All of those things have gone out the window.
Right.
And here we are, we find
9
ourselves...
straight losses.
9 straight losses, and I don't know... With other sports, you can kind of talk yourself into, like, the Rockets, for example, were just embarrassingly bad. They've reeled off 6 straight.
Yeah.
Is hockey a sport, and are the Flyers the type of team that can go on that type of run and just completely change the narrative?
It remains to be seen.
I have my doubts.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I think without some type of significant move, it is impossible. I think some type of shakeup, whether that's offloading something minor and just getting some type of fresh blood. We talked a little bit off mic just about, was it Vigneault or was it just that it's the same guy talking at you for however many weeks, and the message is not breaking through. Something had to give, even if it wasn't directly him. It's merely the action of doing it. That's what we're talking about here. Some type of change.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, Phinally was a Coach of the Year candidate. He, the Flyers were in first place. All this stuff. Now, and he's a pretty respected coach in the NHL. To have his voice just be completely tuned out, seemingly the way it. You don't usually lose that many games in a row without, the locker room being affected. You have to move on. Moving on was the right choice, even though I still think he's a good coach, and they're going to struggle to find somebody better than him, just because of the way the NHL market is right now. But it's something you had to do, and the conversations about Chuck Fletcher have to be had. These are things you can't ignore this, right? We're in agreement. This cannot be ignored. You can't just say it was the coach's fault. Let's move on. Clearly there's something wrong with the roster. There's something wrong with the organization. You have to really look into it, or else you're in denial.
Well, I mean, this was it's certainly an open casket funeral.
Yes.
We've been looking at these guys in the eye as we've been talking about them, and I'm not ready to put them to rest yet. I think that they might still have a chance at somehow, some way, manufacturing a record and just a string of wins, some type of stretch here. I don't think it's completely lost. Right. Talk to me in 10 days, I might feel completely differently.
We'll see. No, well, and that's what it takes. That's what you have to do in this situation. You have to take 10 days.
Put it on ice.
Yeah, exactly. I guess we'll move off of the Flyers.
Oh, there's another team to talk about?
There is actually another team.
Not the sport that's locked out, right? Not that one?
Not the one that's locked out, because we're contractually not able to talk about them. We are prohibited from mentioning even their name or any of their players. If we were to refer to one of them, we would have to say Bryce Barber. That's legally what we have to do. I'm sorry.
I don't know what that guy looks like.
Our hands are tied. Exactly. He's a silhouette, I think. I do want to just touch on the Philadelphia Union, who had their season end last Sunday in just really, really bad, just really sad way.
Great adjectives, man.
Just bad. That's how I feel, man. That's really how I feel. Just bad and sad about it. They get all the way to the conference finals, the furthest they've ever been, and then 3 days before the game, their roster gets hit with COVID and hit hard. 11 players, 9 key players, 5 starters, including the best goalie in the goddamn league, Andre Blake. You lose that. They come out against New York on Sunday, and they're competitive, and they take it to them, and they make you feel like it's possible.
They jump out to a 1-0 lead.
They jump out to a 1-0 lead, and then inevitably the weight of
the moment.
The weight of the moment, and just the degree of talent separation catches up with them. They flick off, they lose concentration for 2 moments, 2 goals. And that's it. And that's their season, and that's a shame. It's the way it is, though. But I want to, focus on the positives. This was a great Union season. A lot of people expected them to take a step back. They had sold a couple of their best players to Trace Dreams in Europe. But they really stuck together. Jim Curran did a great job of organizing the team, and it just goes to show you that this is a legit team to be feared in MLS. There were a few years back, you would have wondered, is it ever going to happen for the Union? Are they just going to be a bottom feeder forever? Well, now they're not. Now they're a legit team. You have the best record in the league last year. You come in this year, you lose a couple players, and you're still, in the conference finals. That's something about the culture. We talk about culture, right?
That's right.
That speaks to the culture of the organization. And this was a bad moment, and it was unfortunate. But I think they're going to come back next year and rally again.
Well, I'm glad that we gave you your little 5 minutes there.
Yes.
And hey, they've got the most senior tenured Philadelphia coach.
By so far.
Significantly so.
9 years he's been there.
That's an eternity in D6 time.
Yeah, that is an eternity in Philadelphia time. You're absolutely right. It's more than 3 times what anybody else, right?
And how better to close a Philadelphia sports podcast than to talk about coming up small in the biggest moments and disappointment at its most finite, tangible level. I mean, the soccer team, the team that everybody was... I mean, they make the finals, man, and you're talking about a lot of people talk... The most people ever even knowing that they exist would have been talking about them, and now that's all lost. And I don't mean to rub it in, but I just want you to know that they will never even come close to having this type of relevance probably ever again in their existence.
I think they're going to go back to the conference finals next year.
But then not go to the finals.
They might go to the finals. if the whole team doesn't catch COVID 3 days before, I think they got a chance.
It's tough, man. It's tough out here. But hey, that's the landscape of Philadelphia sports. You know, we take the lumps and we keep on ticking.
Exactly. Do you have anything else for this podcast, or you think we should wrap it up?
I think that was a really great conversation.
Yes.
I've got nothing more to add.
Yeah.
I hope you have a great night. I hope you can sleep off all these Philadelphia sports storylines, and I hope you have a great day tomorrow.
I hope you, the listener, has an even better day. Once again, thank you for listening. I'm Chris. That's Jake, if you forgot our names. But we'll see you again next time. Thanks.